Hello lovelies, I am the Fragnostic, and tonight on The Holy Truth, we're jumping into our longboats, setting the fucking things on fire, and then returning as haunted, gruesome shells of the proud warriors we once were, denied the endless glories of Valhalla in zombie Vikings. This hot from the store page. From the creators of indie smash hit Stick It to the Man comes a new 1 to 4 player co-op Stab You in the Guttathon. Embark on a dead funny adventure with the zombie Vikings, a putrid posse sent on a mission through the most epic of worlds to retrieve Odin's lost eye. Many thanks to the developers who kindly provided this review copy for the game's Steam release, which launches with some major improvements over the version knocking around on PS4 at the moment, among which you will find a new constant companion in the Unicorn Pig. Because when you sit back and you look at your game a few months after its initial release, and you know it's missing something but you can't quite put your bloody finger on it, why not say fuck it and chuck in a Unicorn Pig? I did actually Google Unicorn Pig to see if there had been any sort of precedent for it, and I found this on my travels, which, you know, isn't a pig, but I'm now definitely one mask closer to what the media will dub the Great Ashford Garden Centre Rampage. Zombie Vikings is, in the simplest possible terms, a side-scrolling brawler in the vein of Castle Crushers, affording you the pleasure of 4 different characters with which to lump out the carnage. The erratic cover story sees your band of reanimated marauders summoned by Odin to pursue the wicked Loki, who has scarpered off across the face of a mythological Norseland with his dad's one remaining eye, shacking up with various colourful inhabitants for protection against the All-Father's wrath, even though this game's Odin is kind of mentally backward, but still friendlier than Marvel Universe Odin, who really only allows Earth to continue existing because it's his favourite place to go and brutally backhand things. As is the hallmark of the genre, most of your gameplay time in Zombie Vikings will be spent beating boxes, crates and enemies around with your sword, for which you will receive loot to purchase more swords and runes to enhance your character. There's little in the way of combat mechanics to master. You have a standard combo, a special move, 2 charged attacks and a jump and running attack with a somewhat awkward parry and evasive roll thrown in for defensive measure. Although there doesn't appear to be any statistical advantage by way of damage output in choosing one character over the other, some really are just better than others. I started the game with Sigurd, a sort of mid-pace selection that wears an octopus on his crotch, before figuring out fairly quickly that the speedier Korkar was a superior choice, due to the fact that she attacks everything so fucking quickly that it interrupts any attempt at an enemy combo, completely negating the need to block. She also possesses a devastating aerial attack and an unlockable sword that doubles the damage of said aerial attack, so why would you pick anybody else? Character balancing problems in these sort of games bug the shit out of me. It's nothing new. I think we all remember the crushing disappointment of picking Skate in Streets of Rage as kids, only to discover that he fought about as well as a 12-year-old on roller skates genuinely would against the goddamn mafia. But still, picking a speedy zombie Viking will allow you to tear through single player like Shinobi through the fucking poorhouse. That's not to say that it's not worth messing around with the other characters, even if it's just to check out their amusing special moves. Sigurd's aforementioned crotch octopus douses enemies with ink and occasionally loses its shit for a spot of Lovecraftian wrestling, whereas Gunborg strikes a muscle pose so hard that she just fucking detonates, dealing out splash damage to everything around her. It's a sign of quirky creativity that you'll find throughout the game, from the ability to meld your characters together to form an ungodly dual-wielding juggernaut, to the variety of the few dozen weapons available for purchase or unlocking as rewards for side quests. My favourite is the cat on a stick. It's just a pissed off cat tied to a fucking stick, and it hates everyone. You can also find sharks, skunks and shattered candy canes fit for causing grievous bodily harm, each with statistical pros, cons and status effects. Although to be completely honest, you never feel like you've gained much of an advantage in a game that's already so ridiculously easy, often so much so to the point of monotony. With 25 stages to plough through, there's not a great deal to do besides mashing the attack key while charging into the passive waves of opponents who, like the rest of Zombie Vikings, are well illustrated, but lack any kind of unique or distinguishing threat between them. In fact, the only difficulty you're likely to encounter is born from trying to pick your character out from the camera pan distance in many of the battles. There's the odd attempt to break the cycle with the occasional boss battle, runner stage, and even a sports game that, like everything else, is ludicrously simple to win if you just pick the quicker characters, but the game largely falls back on its plot to give it any identity. With a genuine, bona fide humorist in the shape of Saturday morning breakfast cereal author Zach Weinersmith penning the script, Zombie Vikings is rammed, and I mean force-fed to fucking breaking point with dialogue and cutscenes to the eventuality where the game feels more like a sketch show than anything else. You can barely move from one screen to the next without hearing some quip or comedy routine going on, which, you know, while you're playing the actual game is fine. In fact, it's downright admirable how much hard work, talent and creativity has gone into the script and voice acting. You'll be hard pressed to find another game this year with the sheer amount of writing per square inch that Zombie Vikings throws at you. There are a metric Cthulhian arseload of pre-level scenes, post-level scenes, inter-level scenes, and if they're not your thing, that's fine, you know, you're more than welcome to skip them, but herein lies the problem. If you don't enjoy this game's story and humour, then what you're left with is a very routine slash 'em up. The combat mechanics, you know, the hinge of the entire game, feels lazy, more so when stretched over more than 24 levels. There's no crunch, no satisfaction in defeating your opponents, and I strongly suspect that the multiplayer aspect that Zombie Vikings is selling itself on is, much like the cutscenes that easily take up over half of the game's actual playtime, a counterbalance for how banal most of it feels. Now don't get me wrong, it's not punch you to the ground, fuck you in the arse terrible. There's nothing wrong with it, but as a 6-hour experience it drags hard, and it feels like the gameplay has been tailored to fit the gargantuan script rather than the other way around. I'd still advocate giving it a try if you're a fan of the genre. The cosmetics may do a lot more for you than they did for me, and this would probably sit a lot prettier if you went at it a bit at a time, rather than the start to finish marathon I subjected myself to. Maybe get some friends too. All mine are prejudiced against ancient Scandinavians, so they refuse to play this with me. I've really got to stop hanging out with the fucking Saxons.